Hey peeps, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, welcome. I do live streams a few times a week for writing and for speaking. So let's see what we have here for part one today. Do you like jewelry? I would say yes, I do, but if you compare my tastes with the average woman's taste, maybe I'm not that much into jewelry. That's just because, like, for example, wearing rings. So I don't like the feeling of my finger, being like suffocated by something. So it's like I'm very fidgety, and so like there's been occasions where I've taken off the ring that I wear, that's like an heirloom ring, right? And so I take it off and I leave it somewhere, and then my mom finds it. So yeah, I'm a little bit careless too. So I usually I would say I like it. I love looking at jewelry. I like, buying things, wearing them, but I'm not a very good caretaker. And in general, I don't like, when there's something on my skin. Yeah, I don't like feeling suffocated. What kind of jewelry do you prefer? So my taste varies a lot. I mean, I had this entire phase a few years ago where I was obsessed with buying jewelry off AliExpress. And if you know AliExpress, it's a treasure trove for finding. Of course, it's not really jewelry. I mean, it's imitation jewelry. It's really cheap stuff, but a really, really cute little butterflies and owls and these, like watermelon shaped earrings. I was just like, ugh, I would buy something off AliExpress almost every week. But yeah, that was back then. The thing is that I have an allergy to nickel, so I can really only wear pure silver or pure gold. And sometimes some metals are okay with me, but otherwise, you know how you get that green cast on your skin? So yeah, that happens with me. So I have to be careful with what I buy or wear. But I love, for example, I love pearls. I just love them. But I just can't seem to find pearl earrings that are big enough. My style is more, I think, 80s type. I don't like really tiny rocks and any kind of, I mean, when I see people's, when I see ads and stuff, and it's like this really tiny thing that you can barely see, like tiny, tiny rocks, they look like specks of dust, and that just doesn't interest me. If I'm gonna wear something, it has to be like a statement piece or something. I love colors. I love like rubies and emeralds and sapphires, anything that really is vibrant. When do you wear your jewelry? So my at the moment I have a ring on. It's a gold ring, and I know in many countries people consider like even 14 karat gold to be gold, but where I live, you really only consider real gold 22 carats and above. So it's an heirloom ring that I have. It's actually my grandmother's that my mother gave to me. And so I wear it. It actually took me a long time to get used to the feeling of having something on my skin all the time. Like I said, I'm not used to that. I get frustrated a lot, but now I like it a lot. And I have these earrings, gold again, simple hoop. I've had them since, I guess, since I was 5 or 6 years old, because I have this picture of me when I was like a baby. I know a 6 year old is not a baby, but I was really very young. I had these really fat cheeks, and so yeah, I had my ears pierced for this, and I remember I really like this design, so I've been wearing that for a long time. But depends on what I'm wearing. Generally depends on the event as well. Like if let's say I'm attending an important event, I might take out my pearls. I love wearing pearls, even if it's like imitation real, whatever it is. Depends, of course, on the style, but I am a huge fan of pearls. So if it's an important event, I actually break out my pearls. But if it's a fun event, or if I'm working with kids, for example, right? Back when I used to work with kids, I'd wear all these funny, interesting earrings, and the kids loved it too. Have you ever given someone gold as a gift? So where I come from, giving someone gold is actually fairly common. Like husbands gift it to their wives, parents gift gold to their children. Like, like even when they're born, when they get married as well. So I mean, I haven't had the opportunity to do that yet. I do consider that gold, like traditionally, of course, it always, holds its value. It's not like a diamond, you buy it and its value is basically gone the second you're out of the shop. So no, not yet. I just think that I mean, I see gold really as an investment. And so if you want to make an investment in someone's name, there's a lot of tax things you have to be aware of. And I know I'm getting boring here because who wants to talk about taxes, right? But the thing is, you can't just get gold and then just give it to someone, because you have to think about, okay, what's their income limit this year? And, do they have other investments and blah, 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 if you don't want to attract, a lot of tax. So you got to be careful with that. And generally, when I gift someone something, I prefer it to be something that's useful. Like, oh, maybe they need a new phone, or maybe they need like a sofa or something, or maybe they need a trip or something of that sort, right? So my gifts tend to be more useful than just investment type. Okay, let's go on to section 2. Describe a car journey that you remember well. You should say where you went, what you did, who you had the car journey with, and explain how you felt about the journey. So if you've watched any of my other videos, you already know I don't really take any time and I just dive straight into responding. Now that is something you can do, right, if you want to, but of course they'll give you, like a minute to prepare your response. So, but I don't need it, so I just go off. All right, so when I was about 7 years old, me and my family, we went, so it was like, I think, I guess it was May, or maybe the third week of May. Not too sure, it was a long time ago. So we went to this region in the northern side of my country where it's usually pretty cold. There's a lot of snow, there's mountains and stuff, and I'd always wanted to go there, so I was super excited. And when we reached there, we of course had a few things, on our agenda. And we had to go to this, so we had this hotel that was like, it was like in this really kind of strange place, because you had to go down a flight of stairs and the stairs were kind of wonky. Again, this place is in the mountains, right? So you can imagine. So anyway, the places we wanted to go to, we wanted to go see snow, we wanted to go try skiing and all these things, right? So we obviously needed to book a car. And so we did. And the thing is, I mean, I'd never really been on a long car trip, like maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes at most, but not longer than that. So the trip from our hotel to this mountain range was like 35 something, maybe 40 minutes. And we take breaks, of course, to get like tea and coffee, snacks and something like that, because we had the car booked for the entire day. Now what happened was that, I mean, in the beginning it was all fine. I had my little Walkman, if you're a 90s kid, you probably remember. If you're a Zoomer, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But we had this little, disc player, so I had that. I felt so cool. Yeah, so the first like 10 minutes, 15 minutes were okay, but then I felt like puking. I was really nauseous, and I was like telling my mom, who was seated next to me, and my dad was up ahead next to the driver. So I was telling my mom, hey, you know what, I need to puke. And she's like, okay, can you control yourself? Can you try? I mean, is it really, an emergency? Because we were, at that point, we were kind of in a secluded area. I mean, it was daytime, it was like maybe 12 p.m. or something, but like it was still not exactly the place where you can stop, because obviously these mountain roads, they're kind of one way. I mean, they're very narrow. You've got a cliff on one side and you can't just stop, it's dangerous. So she was like, can you please just try controlling it? And she was trying to search if she had a plastic bag or something, in her bag. So I could like, worst case situation, I could just, puke in the plastic bag. But she didn't find it. And I was like, when you're nauseous, you can kind of feel the bile coming into your mouth. This is too much information. But I was like really sick, and I was like, oh my God, no, I'm gonna puke anytime soon. And I couldn't even like open my mouth at that point because I was afraid I'll puke all over the car. And so it was a really stressful situation. And I think I was able to like hold on for maybe 5 or 7 minutes more, but we were so lucky because by that time we ended up reaching a place where we could, take a pit stop. We could, there was a bathroom and everything, and it was a place where people could like even order snacks and stuff. So thankfully the driver stopped there, and I just rushed to the restrooms, and I just had to puke. It came all done puking, you're like immediately refreshed and you're like, yeah, I'm ready to go now. And so, yeah, that was like, it's funny because we had an amazing trip there, but this is one of the things that's like deeply burned into my memory. So, yeah. Okay, let's see what we have for section 3. What benefits does public transport bring to the world? So I think using public transport is something all of us definitely need to try doing. For a lot of people, especially in my country, using public transport is kind of a class marker. What that means is a lot of people who are upper middle class or, rich, wealthy, etc., tend to really avoid using public transport, even when it's quicker. But obviously, I mean, considering the population, the size, and, the burden that it has, I can kind of understand that point of view. I mean, obviously, getting an Uber or something is way more comfortable. But the thing is, especially now that we know all these issues with climate change, right? Now, I'm not saying that all the responsibility lies on, you and me and individual people, because of course it's the corporations that are doing most of the polluting. I mean, when Kylie Jenner or Taylor Swift, use their planes like 100 times a year, like, hello, I'm sure that they're more responsible than I am, but okay, let's get back to the topic. So I think it's really important to use, for example, trains rather than using planes. I mean, of course, planes are quicker. In fact, recently I just saw this piece of news online that France is planning to ban domestic flights if you could reach that destination by train in like 2 hours or 2.5 hours. And I think that's a great move because the amount of fuel you need for a plane, for example, is way, way higher than you'd need for a train. And obviously, if you consider how dense most cities are, there's like millions and millions of people living in this really tiny, space. And when you want to transport all these people from their homes to their schools, colleges, workplaces, places of entertainment, you really consider that a train or a bus or the metro could move them a lot faster. And so I think there needs to be heavy investment in public transport, because when people see that, okay, it's pretty convenient, I can get there much quicker, they're going to be more likely to use it and, ditch their car. Of course, you also have cycles and stuff, which technically is private transport, but they're also a very eco-friendly option for really short commutes. So in total, we get to save our planet, and we also get to save our money, right? And you also get to save the government's money, which is ultimately your money. I mean, it's your country's money. So I really don't think there's any drawbacks of using public transport. I mean, the more you use it, the more you kind of signal to the government that, hey, this is a worthy investment. Hey, we need to put more money into building, trains, tram lines, buses, metros, etc. So yeah, it's just great. There's really no cons. Is it too late for people to get their driver's license at the age of 18? Frankly, the entire idea that you should get your driver's license like when you're 16, 17, etc. is a very American idea. In most of the world, it's not easy to get a driver's license, nor is it cheap. But I can understand why it is the way it is in America. Obviously, it's really spread out. There's a lot of land. There's not that many people. And you really can't survive without a car. So obviously, I mean, it makes sense that you let people get their driver's license as young as possible and, as reasonably and cheaply as possible. But in Europe, for example, you need to pay thousands of euros to take the test. And then there's, they're pretty strict with it as well. which again makes sense when you look at the geography, right? It's densely populated, there's less space, you don't really need a car, you can just use the public transport systems. But when you consider human biology, when you consider the fact that a human being's brain isn't really fully developed until they're 25 years old, when I think about that, I think, hey, we need to stop letting people drive unless they're 25. So I don't think it's too late. I think it's too early because 18-year-olds are just teenagers. I mean, it's such an arbitrary number. Hey, you're 18, you're an adult now. What does that even mean? What is that special thing that happens when you're 18? Obviously, when you're 12, 13, around that age, you start to undergo puberty. You start to change from being a child to a teenager. And around the time in your 20s or so, you start to really become an adult. But we've seen with all the research that exists that your brain isn't even done developing. You're still cooking. You're not fully cooked yet until you're 25, because that's when the prefrontal cortex that, is responsible for logical thinking, making good decisions, not being impulsive, that's when it finishes developing. So I mean, it's going to be very unpopular, but if I had the choice, I would definitely prevent people from driving before they were 25. Because come on, the amount of lives that are lost, the amount of drunk driving that goes on, the amount of, like I just read this Reddit post a few days ago, and it was this single mom who was really concerned because her teenage son, I think he was 17, 18 or something, but he was a teenager. So what he did was, he was a new driver, and he kind of crashed into another vehicle, which was unfortunately a cop's car. He didn't harm anyone. It was just a minor, fender bender. But the cop wanted to press charges. And so what he did was essentially, I mean, this kid's life is ruined because he wants to send him to jail even though he could choose not to, right? Now, I understand that what the kid did wrong was that he just ran away from the scene of crime. And you're not supposed to do that. So, it gets counted as a hit and run. So now obviously that's, I mean, I feel sad for the kid, but of course I also understand that, hey, I mean, if it was my car, I would also be upset. Not to the extent the cop was, but I would definitely be upset. At the same time, I think that shows us that, when you're 18, 19, you're not really ready to drive. I mean, at least that's what I think. What qualities does a driver need to have? So first of all, you need to be really calm. Now, I know not every single person on the planet is calm, rational, but when you're driving, consider the fact that you have this huge metal vehicle. It's essentially a death trap because if you so much as lose your attention for a few seconds, you could kill yourself, you could seriously injure yourself, or worse, someone else. In my city, motorcycle riders are such a menace. They're almost never careful. They're always just zooming right past, and it's just really difficult to walk because of these people. And there's, always the issue that, I mean, if you're impaired, you don't really understand. Let's say you went to a party or something, you drank a little bit of alcohol. Now, a lot of people might not even realize that they're inebriated, that they're, drunk. They might feel like, no, it's just like my house is 10 minutes away. I can drive, it won't be a problem. So they tend to, misjudge their ability to drive. And then, of course, we've seen, all these incidents. I mean, I don't even have to say it. You all know how common drunk driving is and, how many lives have been ruined because of not just drunk driving, but bad drivers in general, because they're in a rush. They're not calm. A lot of bad drivers tend to be senior citizens. And again, I have nothing against senior citizens. It's just that when you're older, your mental faculties, like when you're really old, not just older, but like when you're 70, 80, etc. I mean, your hands start to shake, your eyesight isn't that great. So these kinds of things, I mean, I really think there should be people, should be made to retake driver's license tests every, like 7, 8, 9, 10 years or something, just to see if they're still fit to operate a really potentially lethal vehicle, right? The amount of responsibility That's why I personally am super afraid of the idea of driving, so I've never even tried it because I just think, oh my God, if I get behind the wheel, I'm so tense. What if I move in the wrong direction? What if I accidentally scrape someone else's vehicle? What if I end up, pushing into a human being? I mean, it's really scary for me to think about that. So yeah, you need to have nerves of steel. And you really need to have good eyesight. And of course, you need to have good hearing. I think you also need to have a healthy amount of respect for the law. Because a lot of people think that, oh, these laws are just silly, and as long as no one's hurt, it's okay. I can, go past when you have a red light and things like that if I don't see anyone on the road. But because people don't respect the law, we have a lot of accidents that could otherwise be prevented, which is really sad. Do you think the government should make it a rule for people to use public transport? So I'm a big proponent of liberty. I might even call myself a libertarian in some sense, not in the perfect sense. But like, to just kind of go back to the point where, I told you I read this news report about France banning all domestic flights. Now, on the one hand, it's great for the environment, right? That, hey, you can't, there's just no planes available for, short durations. But then again, it really limits the freedom of people. I mean, if I want to take a plane, I have the funds for it. Maybe I would prefer to be more comfortable in a plane than in a train. For whatever reason, I don't want to take the train. Why should I not have that choice, right? And if I, as someone who is, let's say, a pilot, right? Or maybe even someone who owns an aircraft company. Why is the government trying to cut into my business, cut into my revenue? That's not fair. That's cutting down on their freedom. So when I think of that, principle, the principle of human freedom, that's where I don't like this idea. But then I also have another side that thinks, what about the environment? What about planet Earth? It's so amazing that we have this planet that supports everything. You plant a seed in the soil and it gives you a beautiful tree. It gives you food. It gives you things you need. It gives you wood to build a table, for example. I just find nature fascinating. I find the whole idea of planet Earth fascinating, and I think we need to protect it. But the thing is, if you make it a rule, that's where the problem is. I think they should definitely heavily encourage public transport for sure, but I don't agree with banning other forms of transport. I don't think we should infringe on people's freedom as much as possible. That just does not sit right with me. Do you see driverless cars as the future of cars? So I think we're kind of already underway with this. I mean, it's already starting to, I don't know much about like cars in general, but from what I've seen, all these electric cars and stuff that are kind of there, like Teslas and stuff like that. Obviously, a lot of people who have them really think that they're better than the average car. And if it helps to prevent accidents and things like that, I think why not? I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? Because before the car, we had the horse buggy. But obviously, animal driven buggies and things like that, they're not perfect. Obviously, it's an animal. And, then you have, of course, the question of animal exploitation, which is not ideal. And of course, I mean, a car uses fuel, an animal, well, it gets tired, an animal is not, predictable or anything. But a car is, well, you tell it to take a right turn, it takes a right turn. So obviously we moved on from that. So why not move on from normal cars to driverless cars? I mean, when you consider all the advancements that have taken place, even in just 20 years, I mean, I still remember 20 years ago, I was a child. I still remember how things used to be. With all the progress that we made, I think driverless cars will definitely be an important part in the future. I just don't know when, but I'm thinking maybe in the next 30 to 50 years, we might not see normal cars as we have anymore. So, because again, the benefits are there for everyone to see. If it's safer, if it's more efficient, if it causes less damage to the environment, it's a no-brainer, right? All right, so that was today's speaking session. One thing that you may notice, I've tried to kind of decrease my speaking speed. Let me know if you prefer this and I'll continue this way. Maybe even if you want me to slow down a bit more, just let me know, because I want to ensure that you can understand everything I'm saying, right? So I might end up taking more time to deliver a response, but that's just to give you ideas as to what you can say, right? So, and by the way, we have a new batch starting up for all of our IELTS Sure Score programs. And again, I'm the only teacher there is, so you're going to learn everything straight from me. Our batch starts on June 5, so if you're interested, you can just drop a comment down below, or you can even message me privately and I'll get back to you. All right then, I'll see you next time. Bye.